Hi for the third time now. Unbelievable. And we're waiting for Joanna again. Joanna the Healer, Joanna the Medium. For those of you who have never seen her, it's worth it. This is the third time I've had her on, and she's incredibly interesting. Got lots to say. It's not showing up, she says. Hang on. Hang on. Let's see what happens. Hello.
Hello. Oh my God, please tell me it's working.
I'm telling you, it's working. I don't think we've ever had an interview without some glitches. So something's
You know what
going
it
on.
is? You know what it
Something,
is?
but it doesn't matter. We're here now. How are you?
I'm good. I just figured it out. There's quite a bit of a delay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
There's
We're
a
here.
delay.
So we're going to have a quick one because you're going into a session and we kind of misappropriated, or I won't use that word. What did we do? Some communication went wrong regarding times, but here we are now, and that's all that counts. So I've sort of informed people that you're a medium, you're a healer, and it's something that was innately in you since you've been a child. And I know you've told this story a million times, but just give us a fast track version of how this gift found you. And you've been doing it ever since now for what, 30 odd years?
Something like that, professionally for about 20.
Yes, professionally for 20, but it was always in you. And it's basically channeling. And I notice some people out there, that's going to sort of be a head scratcher, but that doesn't worry me, because we seem to be living at a time when people used to say stuff like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
But that seems to be quickly changing to, I'll see it when I believe it.
Right.
Because we seem to be, we were talking about frequencies, and we're not just talking about the pandemic, we're talking about things that you're channeling from what you call your team, messages that you get. And we're living in a very fast track changing world, aren't we?
Extremely fast and furious in some cases.
Say that again?
Fast and furious in some cases, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. The world has sped up.
Well, the world has sped up, and I know personally, I mean, I can only talk from personal experience. Something's pushed, it's like erratic ups and downs, but yet behind that erraticism, no such word, but you make up your own words, so I'm allowed to as well, aren't I?
Oh, geez.
So,
exactly.
I love people that make up their own words. So behind that kind of up and down, there seems to be a feeling of you're okay all the time. And I don't know whether that's just me or other people are feeling that, but I just wanted to share that. And I don't want to be selfish about it and talk about me, but there seems to be this, you got it, you got this kind of thing behind me. And I've never really had that. We all have our ups and downs. And when I felt down, I felt down when I felt down. But at the moment, I'm having this kind of yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. But bottom line, yes. So is that unusual? Do you want to tell people why they're feeling the way they're feeling, if they're feeling anything?
Well, where you are at with this is fabulous. I'm sure there are some people who say, what the hell is he talking about? Right?
I'm sure.
But yes, and everybody gets to that stage at some point, and they're asking me to just very briefly touch on the idea of channeling, just to make it very 3D and very accessible to everybody, because it is innately what we do anyway. Channeling is nothing more than me perceiving information that is generally beyond our human perception. So I am basically picking up signals from other realities, because I believe we do live in other realities. And I literally project that information forward using my language and my understanding. That's pretty much channeling. Anybody can do that. Takes no special person to do that.
Right.
However, what we believe about it will determine whether a person can easily access it or not. So just the very idea of that can't be true, or this is not for me, or oh my God, it's some kind of a monster, it kind of stops the process right in its track. Right? So that's, I just want to throw it out there, just so when people are scratching saying channeling, what is weird? What's weird thing is that? It's nothing weird about it. It's perceiving information, which we do all the time. We just don't know it. Okay? So maybe it takes the weirdness out of it. I actually like that.
How takes the weirdness out of it? Yes, I like that too. How do we align with that? How can we align with something like that?
Thank you for asking the question. We align with it the closer we get to our own truth, which requires one to know oneself. So, for example, the belief
authenticity. Would authenticity fall in that category, or not really? Or is it more
absolutely
truth?
Yes. I feel like authenticity is a big part of it, but it's not all of it. Essentially, when we walk around, most of us humans think of ourselves as humans and nothing but, right? So because of that, we can only benefit from what that particular awareness gives us. In other words, we cannot experience something we cannot perceive, right? So the moment a person opens up to the idea that we are more than just physical bodies, but they still walk around in their physical bodies, having awareness of their non-physical bodies, all of a sudden they will begin to reap the benefits of being aware of that. And that enhances the human experience. So the closer we get to our own truth, which is basically knowing who we are deep inside, and that takes a lot of work. And we are doing a lot of digging right now. You probably have been feeling up and down. That's emotional turmoil coming up to be cleared. So that is how we can align ourselves in order to perceive that. But we are the perceivers, we are the receivers all the time. It's not like we have to go buy it somewhere or somebody gives it to us. It is innately part of who we are. It is the more layers we have on ourselves that say we're this, we're not that, we can't do. The more we have that, the more that separates us from the truth of who we are.
And I suppose once we tap into those truths, or as we're going in that trajectory, will things like fears and anxiety and say negative thoughts will lessen accordingly to how much we align ourselves with those truths. Is that right? I mean fears and stresses and anxieties don't live in that truth as readily as they do in non-truth, do they?
No, because fear and anxiety lives predominantly in the human understanding. It's the human part of us. So the more we understand ourselves as a human from a deeper perspective, the more we realize that we are more than just a human, and therefore things like fears and feelings and certain things that are limiting, we'll begin to see that those are aspects of us, but those are not who we are. So when we have that realization that, oh my God, this thing that I keep telling myself that I'm insecure, that's actually, it's a feeling, it's a belief, but it is not me. And when we begin to do that, that's when we start to see the truth of who we are. So it's layers and layers and layers of belief systems.
So would you say that the unauthentic life that we're living is bringing those fears into creation? They don't actually exist. We're bringing them into creation because we haven't seen the truth yet. Is that what's happening? Because we're lying to us. We're living a sort of a life of lies. I don't like to use that word lies, but because of not living in truth, we're creating stuff that is also untrue.
It's what you're saying is, I see it as a law of attraction. What you believe is what you create. So how do I address this question? Can you ask me the question again?
Yeah, is whilst we're not living our truths and we're
Right.
not aligning fully with our truths, as you say,
Right.
are we also creating untruths in our existence, like fears? Are we also
Yeah.
the creator of those illusions?
So what we feel and what we believe, oftentimes the belief is on an unconscious level, but what we believe and what we feel is ultimately what we create, right? Because that's what we give attention to. We don't give attention to things we are not aware of. Does that make sense? So we will only create based on what we are aware. Now, some people will say, well, I'm aware that I'm a worthy person. Why am I keep experiencing these things that make me feel unworthy? Well, the reality is that you believe you are worthy. You tell yourself that, but chances are quite high that when you go deeper to the layers, there's a part of you that says, no, you're not. And it's because it's attached to some past event or series of events that impressed a certain vibrational frequency that made the person feel not good enough. And with that imprint, so to speak, they kind of go on living their life. And until that is addressed, it becomes the driver. So a person can tell themselves, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, but they keep on experiencing almost the opposite of what they'll tell themselves. That's a dead away sign that you're at inner conflict. And as long as there's an inner conflict, well, this is what happens, right? We try to bring in something, but we can't seem to do that. And that's because vibrationally speaking, we're not aligned. Our own inner truth is not aligned with what we are trying to create. Now, our own inner truth doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth either. It's merely our interpretation.
So it's our interpretation.
It's our interpretation of an event that gives us a certain meaning about this, or that. But that's a perspective, right? That's a perspective, and perspective can always be shifted. But until we actually understand and are aware of our current perspective, we cannot shift it.
Oh, so until we're aware that we're creating that thought, we can't shift it. So
it's very hard. It's
being conscious of it.
100%. That's what ascension is. It's rising of consciousness, which is rising of awareness.
Okay.
That's what enlightenment is. It's broadening, seeing, being aware of the more than what we can see.
So if awareness interrupts between the thought and the emotion, then you've got an opportunity to climb out of that thought, so to speak.
Let me just picture what you said. If
awareness intervenes between that thought, whether it's a stressful thought or fearful, if awareness intervenes, then we've got the opportunity of it not becoming the emotion.
I love what you just said, because you said it in such a scientific way that it's a very left brain grabbable. I love it. See, I had to see it. And what I saw when you were talking is a flow, and then all of a sudden something intervened in that flow, so there was no longer a flow that normally would flow. So what you are talking about is awareness allows for an opportunity to break a pattern.
Yeah, exactly.
To redirect the flow. Yes.
And you said it perfectly as well in another way, but it's the same thing. But I like what you said. That's great, because I think if we make people aware of their awareness, aware of the fact that they have that tool to break the thought before it becomes an emotion. So the thought comes in, and if the awareness can intervene between the thought and the emotion, they can exercise that habit and they can get better at it all the time. And if is now aware that they have an awareness that can do that, if I'm not overcomplicating things. Now, yeah, there's something to think about. Now, with the frequency that we're talking about, this quicker frequency that's happening, is that giving us the ability? Is that giving us the opportunity to align, or is that something entirely different? I mean, the fact that everything's moving so quickly, is that also a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, you can get on this train and kind of be freer? Is that going to happen? Is that frequency tapping us on the shoulder to say, come to the station because the train's moving, and that has, and if you get on that train, you have an opportunity for a better life, or a freer life, or a fuller life? Does that make any sense?
It does, because again, I'm seeing it. So what you're saying is yes, but I want to respond to it by saying that the current frequency complements our journey, which means if we were not experiencing this frequency, our journey, it feels like it's being sped up. Now, everyone has an opportunity to get on this train, so to speak. Not everyone. Why am I saying this? That's just kind of interesting why this came up. Okay, apparently not everybody is interested in being an enlightened man. I'm like, okay, well, who are they? Why not?
Free will, I guess.
And what I just heard when I said, why not? And yeah. Now I understand, because it is hard work. It takes a lot of inner conflict resolution, which begins with the I, the understanding and knowing the I and who I is. And that is very self-reflective. And that is not easy, which is why we were talking about all these ups and downs, emotional things coming up. So the energy is complementing our journey. And if I could use the words speeds it up, it would probably be a good way of explaining it. But what it does, I feel, it gives us the opportunity to get rid of things we no longer need, because they will come up in our face. And this energy is supportive of us shifting from whatever is being presented to us. So if it's a negative pattern that's coming up in our face, or some fears, which we've had a lot of these coming up in the last year, you know why? Yes. That's part of the big picture. Because we can't get away from it as much as we used to be able to, because we are faced with confronting it. It gives us the opportunity to look into it so that we can move through it faster. Okay, there's no such thing as time, but for the purpose of 3D conversation, faster, which means also we don't have to stay in a suffering awareness as long, right? And who wants to suffer? I have not met a person who says, I want to, right? No. Unless you're paying for some kind of a game and you want to kind of see what it feels like. But generally speaking, no one wants to suffer.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. People that don't want to suffer, but haven't delved into any form of spirituality, and they've heard about it, they've seen it, they're subjected to it, and they're wanting to take the first step. You're saying it's hard work, which it is, and they're wanting to take that first step into a spiritual discovery, something else, something more than this. What would be the first, I mean, I don't know if it's a tough question, but what would be the first step someone could take? Should they pick up a book? Should they meditate? Or should they just create an awareness that there is a possibility?
So I want to demystify a little bit. I'm being asked to demystify the idea of being spiritual, because that may, what does that mean? Like, when someone talks to me about Jesus, I must have some past life connection that come, because the word Jesus doesn't really ring true with me. But anyway, I want to demystify the idea of being spiritual. Being spiritual simply means knowing yourself, which means going beyond the understanding of the human ego. and looking at perception beyond our current perception. So it's looking beyond what we can normally see and perceive. And one of the more effective way to get to essentially know yourself is to listen to your feelings. Why? Because feelings are indicative of your story. Your story is what is your foundation or a blueprint for creating life. So when you understand your story, you will understand why life is or has been the way it has been. And all of a sudden you gain a higher understanding. And all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I didn't realize I was creating this. And it has I'm going to say it. It has nothing to do with the religious idea of God. Religion is a human thing for a reason. It's wonderful and all of that, but I don't consider spirituality and religion as one and the same. So someone can be spiritual with having absolutely no belief about religion. However, they will have an awareness that there is something more than this.
So your story would incorporate your environment, your parental upbringing, your career. What would your story essentially be if you had to break it down? When you say story.
What I mean by story is, what is your internal truth about you in terms of life? In other words, who
am I?
Who are you? And you are a compilation of all your experiences, which include physical, emotional, spiritual, etc., and beliefs and thoughts and all those wonderful things that have happened.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm not an accountant.
Correct. Correct. Or I'm a healer. Well, great, everyone is. Or I'm this. But the moment you said I am, you are claiming it. So when for example, I love why this just came up. For example, when someone says, I'm always broke, I'm always broke, I'm always broke, I'm always worried, I'm always worried, I'm always sick, they are claiming them for themselves. So it's not what they want, but it's what they claim. If they're not aware of that truth, they will continue to do that forever.
What's the difference between want and need?
Want is something we desire. Need is something we need to have for whatever reason. So our physical needs have to be met in order for us to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive. And surviving and thriving are both living, but two different things. Would you agree?
Completely.
Right.
Yeah, well, you need to survive.
Right.
But sometimes when people say they need, don't you feel they're coming from lack as well? Isn't there a lackness in there? Like wanting something can be desiring something. Needing something, I don't know if you agree, can also be, I really need that, because it can also be coming from a space of lack.
Whenever we need something, it is because we don't have it. So that in itself is lack. Right? And we can take it in 10,000 different directions. But that, because as you're talking, I'm getting, what if I say, for example, I need to feel safe? Well, that is something that I, as a human, absolutely need in order to put my foot outside the front door every morning. So does that mean that?
What about I need a new car when you're driving a car that's going perfectly well? I need a new model car. Where's that coming from?
So that's a great question. So what you're now differentiating between the emotional and spiritual, and then the ego perception. So those are connected, but they're different. So what you are talking now about, someone satisfying their ego. Now, I do not mean ego in the bad ego way. I don't believe ego is bad. Ego simply means how a person identifies themselves. That's what ego means to me. Okay? There's nothing bad about it. What was I going with this? I lost the train of thought.
It's okay. We were talking about someone needing a new car when they've already got a perfectly good car.
So let's say someone drives a car, but it's kind of like, would be nice to have a new one. And they say, no, I need a new car. I need a new car. So it will be different for themselves, for each person. But if they were to sit down and go, do I really need it? And is it the car? And what is it that this new car is ultimately going to make me feel? Because at the end of the day, pretty much everything we do is because we're trying to attain a certain state. Right? We go to work because we're going to make money, because that makes us feel safe, it's sustainable, it fulfills certain needs. But some needs are necessary and some needs are nice to have. So in this example, the person would have to be very honest with themselves. Do I need the car, or is it what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for a sense of contentment, when one thing is for sure, that new car is going to give you a sense of that for about 10 minutes, and then you're right back to square one.
Yeah, you're going to look a little bit better driving a new car, and the word desire, conjures up such a lot of stuff, because people say, well, I've got desire, but unless desire is another one that has to be aligned probably in order to receive, in order to manifest. Desire can't just be a word that you say, or you write your affirmations. I feel it has to be something that you feel on a physical level. Desire, not from a greedy aspect, but just and not from a needy aspect, but from something you desire. You desire a soulmate, and you're really desiring it. You're not desperate. You're not in lack of the soulmate, but you're desiring it. Do you want to talk about that aspect of wanting without greed, but rather with a manifestation that aligns with the universe, where the desire is kosher?
When I hear you, I'm having my own conversation, because I'm asking them to explain to me what he's trying to say. I'm
trying to say that people say they have desire.
Yeah, and desire is a good thing. Desire,
it's a great thing, but when is it genuine? When does it have an alignment with the cosmos to the degree where that manifestation actually happens, where that desire? I mean, what's the difference between just desire and true aligned desire? And how do we know when we're aligned? Is it a feeling? Is it a knowingness that we innately feel because we get the butterflies in our stomach? Or how do we know that we're putting true desire out there? I guess
I feel like I could split what you just said in 10 different directions. So I'm trying to catch one, and I love the way you talk. Like I always said, you're very interesting. So, for example, someone might have a desire for a new car. But is that the true desire? Is that the true desire? Is that really what they desire, or what they desire is a sense of contentment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Right? So we have many desires, and I would say most of our desires are complemented by a certain vibration, which is a feeling we have towards or around that desire. So for example, basic example, human standard, we want abundance, we want money, we want love, we want this and that. However, so we desire that, right? Let's say we desire it. However, what we may desire may not be vibrationally aligned with what we believe about it, or what we really feel about it as our deep truth. So if our deep truth about, for example, money is not for me because I grew up poor, that stamp, that imprint is a vibration that is one's truth about money, unless they become aware of it and change their truth. So you may desire money, but your that may not really be. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Completely.
Okay.
You just said you grew up poor. I also came from a very, very humble background. How did you overcome that? How have you overcome that feeling of coming from that background? Where are you with that now? How comfortable are you now with material gain, or not having one?
I'm going to pat myself on the back, although I have to say, and I will always say it, it's always work in progress. Always. It's years. You asked the question how. The simplest way to put it is, years and years of self-awareness. It's as simple as that. Now,
do you ever feel lack? Do you ever feel lack?
Oh my God, are you kidding? I've been feeling that the last 2 weeks, and it's like, what the hell's happening? So I will go through these dips, right? I will go through these dips, and I've now learned that when I go through these dips, it's almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps. And every time I go through that process, I've had quite a few. I notice that right after, my energy just goes, and all of a sudden things shift, and my works become different. And it's what's happening right now. So I've been in this lull for the last 2 weeks. So absolutely, I get into a lack place. But I also now have the awareness that that's my old story. That is my old story. That's what I've been conditioned to think and do. That's what feels most natural to my body to follow without thinking. So I have to catch myself. However, what I do is this. I no longer fight the feeling, which I used to fight it, because when it feels like crap, you don't want to feel it. The last thing you want to do is embrace it. What I've learned to do is I've learned to embrace the discomfort of how I feel. And if there's anything that I could leave with you guys today is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay, not all the time, because when you are uncomfortable all the time, that becomes a strange comfort zone, obviously, right? So, but it's being okay with feeling what we don't want to feel in order for the feeling to work through you. Okay, that's the.
Okay. So it's a bit like saying life has good and bad, but that's okay if you can let it flow in and flow out, and that you realize that the bad is, there's always going to be good and bad, and that's okay if you live in the flow of that.
Yes, and I for myself personally, and what I teach my clients is I teach them to gently observe the feeling. So not just be in the head, because that's what we try to do. We try to compute here, we go to logic, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the feeling. So I teach my clients to objectify what they feel. And what it allows them to do, it allows them to be more in control of how they feel versus the feeling controlling them. So there is still feeling happening, but the feeling is much more, can I say the word, much more contained. It also is when a person becomes very aware that they are not the feeling themselves.
Yeah, well, you know, it's really developing that toolbox that we can go to, isn't it? Developing that toolbox, you know, going and pulling out our awareness and our consciousness and our realization that it's only a thought, and with those tools,
right,
we can navigate life in a different way.
It's correct. And what they're saying here is, or what they're suggesting here, if you could just, for those people who are not keen on feeling things that are not great, which is, I would say, most people, if you give yourself a week to kind of experiment and go about your day, and every time you have a feeling that strikes you, just allow yourself to feel it and observe it without doing anything about it, without judging it, without trying to fix it, without, oh my God, I shouldn't be, just simply going, oh, there it is.
Fantastic. Listen, I know you're pushing for time. Give us a takeaway, if you wouldn't mind, for the frequency that we started off with this discussion, that everything's moving quicker. So where are we going? I mean, do we know? I mean, with this frequency, with this speed, being on the bullet train, where are we going? And I'm not going to say where will it finish, because we're endless, but what's the result of this going forward, so to speak, for people? This frequency, how is it going to heal us? Is it going to accelerate us in a way that's better for our world? What is this frequency, this new frequency that we're talking about at the moment? And I feel it. What is it? What's the path of it? What's it going to create for us?
Again, I could extrapolate that to about 10 different pieces. So I'm going to try answer it in a way that encompasses it all somehow.
I'll probably
The
ask
purpose
them.
of this frequency, if you will, the purpose of this frequency is to allow each individual to gain greater awareness of the truth of what is. In other words, to be more aware of who you truly are beyond the confounds of your own humanness. When every individual begins to see and understand, and most importantly, experience the truth of who they are, they will no longer be functioning primarily from the ego. And ego is where we get into trouble. Now, again, I want to say ego is absolutely important. I don't vilify the ego, and I always tell people, do not vilify the ego. You are here to have an experience through the eyes of your ego. It's absolutely important. It is only about, is ego driving our experience? And ego is all our beliefs, positive and negatives, or is ego complementing part of our spiritual journey, and we are aware of both, and therefore experience both. When we tap into the truth of who we are no longer so cruel. We're no longer so mean. We're no longer passive at looking at people's pain, because we're naturally are beings of light. And it is our ego perception that prevents us from seeing that.
So mercy is coming at the end of the tunnel.
I hope so.
Listen, on that note, before I let you go, joannathehealer.com.
Yes.
Is the website. You've also got a YouTube weekly pulse, which is fantastic, and I'm a huge fan, have been for ages. That's very, very powerful. And you wanted to discuss a webinar coming up on the 18th.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so March 18th, which is this Thursday coming up, I'm in the fever of spring cleaning, so not just physical, but also especially the mental and emotional. So we're holding a live webinar for basically transforming false beliefs, transforming limited beliefs. I was trying to figure out how to put a link on there, but the only way you can find it is if you go to my YouTube channel, my latest videos, and click on more info. There's a link right there. It's unleashing your true power to create.
So if they go on Joanna the Healer on YouTube.
Joanna the Healer on YouTube, and under the video,
they'll find the link to the webinar, which is on Thursday the 18th.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll be all over that. And
thank you.
It's been. I hope you've enjoyed this.
Pleasure as always.
Our regular chat, because you are a regular. And thank you again so much for enlightening us, really. I mean, you know, and sharing what you channel with your team. I know everybody enjoyed it, and hope to see you soon. And wish you great success with your webinar. Thank you very much. And lots of love, Joanna. My pleasure. Much love to you. Take care. Bye-bye.